welcome back to the second episode of the Goal Line Stand on YouTube. We are extremely happy to have you here and extremely excited to get into this episode. Today, we are talking about my personal top 10 teams going in to this next year. Obviously, things are subject to change. Different transfers still need to be made. Different things on the depth chart that will really affect these teams that I'm talking about here could affect where they stand in the top 25 this year. But we are extremely excited to have this episode. And without further ado, let's start it off. At number 10, I have the Baylor Bears, head coached by Dave Aranda. They made a big step up after their 2020 season into the 2021 season, and I expect that to keep the same stuff. I think Dave Aranda has done an amazing job, especially with that offense, to make them kind of be a threat in some sense, and their defense is really, really good too. Baylor's definitely a sleeper team. Reigning Big 12 champions, I think that they could get it done considering the slow off season that Oklahoma's had, obviously Lincoln Riley leaving for USC, and then I think Texas, they're kind of getting there with their recruits and stuff. Steve Sarkisian's done a good job, but I think the time is now for Baylor to repeat. I think the key additions that they made in the recruiting session is just amazing. Armani Winfield, 4-star wide receiver out of Texas, great pickup. Really skilled, really quick first step for him. So I think that's just really something that Dave Aranda has done a great job. You also look at some of his other recruits. Keon Roberts-Day, 4-star edge rusher, and Jeremy Patton, a 3-star safety. I think just great recruits and just a great turnaround that he's made from 2020 to 2021 and possibly to 2022. So that's why I have them ranked number 10. Now, there are some advantages and disadvantages to that. Just some disadvantages is they have a big target on their back in the Big 12. Obviously, Oklahoma State, Mike Gundy, they have a vendetta for him. You know, they just aren't really, they don't really like the way that season ended for him, especially the Big 12 championship game being this close to possibly being in the college football playoff, but also possibly being Big 12 champions again. Mike Gundy and Oklahoma State, they're going to look to do that again. I think that is probably Baylor's biggest threat, having to play everybody like the Big 12 does. Be looking out for Oklahoma State in the Big 12. Some advantages, though, are a lot of good returning players. We got Abram Smith, the running back, over 1,000 yards, around 1.7 thousand yards, which is pretty good if you're a running back. You also got Gary Bohannon, their quarterback. He's pretty good too, and Blake Shapen, their other quarterback. It's gonna be a duel throughout fall practices, fall camp, and we'll see who wins the starting job. Both quarterbacks are really good though, and look for Dave Aranda to kind of use them both, kind of like Northwestern used to do with Pat Fitzgerald. I think that might be a similar system that Dave Aranda implements for the Baylor Bears. Moving on to number 9, and this might shock a couple people, but I think this is a little generous on my part. Number 9, I have Clemson and Dabo Swinney. I think they're coming off a bad year, but you can never count out Dabo Swinney. He's a great coach, great recruiter, and he just seems to be a positive point for the college football kind of community. He's a really good coach, and he gets a lot of that media attention. So I think this might be a bounce back year. I don't think they're going to go to the college football playoff. Don't get that confused. But I think it's going to be a better year. They were a 3-loss team last year, had a great back half of the year, but just a really, really poor start to the season there for the Clemson Tigers. They bring in some pretty solid players though. Cade Klubnik, quarterback from Texas. He is the real deal, in my opinion. Great quarterback. Dabo Swinney did a great job having him to stay at Clemson, regardless of all the coordinator madness that happened at Clemson the past month. Obviously, Tony Elliott leaving to go be Virginia's new head coach, and Brent Venables leaving to go backfill Lincoln Riley's position at Oklahoma, making him the Oklahoma head coach. Obviously, Lincoln Riley left in abrupt fashion, and I think Brent Venables, he's a good recruiter and just a good person for that Oklahoma program. So, Dabo Swinney, he's got a lot of work to do, but I think Cade Klubnik being there is a great start. And, we're going to see who really wins that starting quarterback job. It might be the true freshman Cade Klubnik. I think he's insane. We could see him get the Trevor Lawrence treatment that Clemson gave Trevor Lawrence, and obviously Trevor Lawrence is excelling in the league now. Had a great week last week against the Colts. And, Trevor Lawrence, he won a national championship his true freshman year, won the starting job over Kelly Bryant in week 8. So, just some things that I just want to put out there. DJ Uiagalelei, he's good, but Cade Klubnik, in my opinion, is a lot better. And just some disadvantages is, obviously, we touched on the coordinator problem, but it was a down year last year. There's a lot more pressure on Dabo Swinney to bring the team up to the top level. Heading on over to number 8, we have Utah, coached by Kyle Whittingham, and Utah had an amazing offseason, obviously adding some big-time transfers, some big-time recruitments in early signing period. They had an amazing game against Ohio State in the Rose Bowl, came up short, but I think that just shows the amount of grit and toughness that Utah puts in its players. Kyle Whittingham, he's been there for a really long time, produced some amazing players, and I think that Utah is definitely not some team that you want to mess with. They are the reigning Pac-12 champions, and they're just a solid team all around. Their defense is really good. Their secondary is really good. Look for them to rebuild the players that they lose to the draft. But I think a good player that I really want to just signal out that he's coming back is Cameron Rising, their quarterback. Obviously, he played lights out against Ohio State, a team that is going to be really good this next year. But Cameron Rising, he's a gritty quarterback. He's got the size. He's got the strength. I think he's a really good quarterback. Might be a dark horse, in my opinion, for the Heisman Trophy if he can keep this play up and this caliber up to the way he played against Ohio State in the Rose Bowl. I think that was the best showing I saw of him all year. And I watched both of his games against Oregon, and I still think the Rose Bowl was a better game for him. Now, some disadvantages that I do have for that Utah team, which these are pretty big for them to see if they can get over that hump, is the fact that they start the season off in the swamp against the Florida Gators. Now, the Florida Gators made a coaching change over this offseason with Billy Napier coming in to be their head coach. So I think that might play into the fact, but you never want to play in the swamp. We can go back to the Tim Tebow days. Don't want to play there. It's a hostile environment. It's obviously extremely hot, humid. It's not somewhere you want to be in week 1. I will tell you that. Their fans are insane. It's just something that's the Florida Gator experience, I think. And Utah, they got to deal with that. So that's what I think about that. They also play San Diego State. That is a home game, and Utah normally has an amazing crowd for their home games. But San Diego State and Brady Hoke are not a team you want to mess with. And also, I think they have a 2-week stretch where they play both USC, and UCLA, which are very competitive teams. While they have an amazing history, they've had kind of some down years. USC is on the rise, so is UCLA. So it'll be interesting to see how Utah adapt and try to win their second straight Pac-12 championship. Now on to number 7. This is where I start to I love the fact that I have them ranked so high. They completely deserve it. This is the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Marcus Freeman is an amazing coach. I think it was an amazing hire for Notre Dame to go out and hire him. Marcus Freeman obviously played at Ohio State, coached at Cincinnati under Luke Fickell, went up to Notre Dame, and won that promotion, won that job to go and make himself a head coach. And I will always say this. The younger the head coach, the more recruits. You always want your entire coaching staff to be young because the players can relate to you more. Marcus Freeman is a former player at the highest level. I think this is a great hire. He understands the game, and, his defense was good the entire year. And, there was some hiccups in the way that they performed in the Fiesta Bowl. But, that was his first game as a head coach. And, you can't really put that all on his back. Once it gets to his second year, that's when I think that you can start to put all their wins and losses on his back, because this is still not his team. It is his team. Like, the title is his. He is the head coach, and he will continue to coach them, but he didn't recruit these players. So I think once next year, that'll kind of be his team. You'll get some true freshmen in, and you'll get some sophomores that he recruited in his first year at Notre Dame, which was this past year. So I think that's when you'll start to see that shift in the Notre Dame mentality. Obviously, the Notre Dame mentality is something that is held at a pedestal in the college football world, and I mean, why shouldn't they? They have an amazing past, so I think Marcus Freeman is definitely the right choice. So some key additions that we have here are Jalen Snead, a 5-star linebacker, Tobias Merriweather, a 4-star wide receiver, and Emil Wagner, a 4-star offensive tackle. Marcus Freeman, he can recruit, but, they have a tough schedule. Obviously, playing week 1 in the Horseshoe, which is not something that you really want to do. It's a hostile environment, and especially Ohio State is looking to bounce back, and not really where you want to start if you are an aspiring team like Notre Dame. So, for number 6, and I am excited about this one, Arkansas, head coached by Sam Pittman. Obviously, it's not a team that you're used to seeing up here, but they deserve it. Sam Pittman won the transfer portal. There's no changing my mind. Jaden Hazelwood is an amazing prospect, wide receiver out of Oklahoma. I think there's not much that you can say about him. He's talented. He gets a quick first step, great hands, and he can just take the football into the end zone. That's what you want from a wide receiver. I don't know if there's any better way to describe it. He's an amazing football player. I also want to talk about linebacker Drew Sanders that they just got today as I'm recording this from Alabama. Great prospect. Anybody that you can get from Alabama on a transfer is a good player. You have to be a good player to play at Alabama. That's what Nick Saban says. So I think Drew Sanders is a great pickup there for the Hogs. And then also Dwight McGrothin. He is a great player from LSU. Cornerback, I think Woo Pig is right. Great pickups by Sam Pittman. Some advantages are they're coming off a great season, 9-4, a bowl game win, and John Cantalone will be back from a shoulder surgery. So I think that's just good advantages for that Arkansas team. However, there are some disadvantages. They have to play Texas A&M and Alabama in back-to-back weeks, and you can hope to win one of those games, but you can't hope to win them both. So some disadvantages there. At number 5, we have Michigan, with their head coach is kind of in limbo right now. We think it's going to be Jim Harbaugh. Was Jim Harbaugh until this past week, wondering if he'll take wondering if he'll take that head coaching job elsewhere. So in the NFL. So Jim Harbaugh, he's proved himself for this past year. Everybody's had their doubts. I've had my doubts about him. He's a great coach. But, is he that good coach for Michigan in their mentality? I know I've said that a lot this episode, but Michigan is also one of those teams that are on a pedestal. Notre Dame and Michigan are some of those teams that I think about where, you just have that rich history. And, Jim Harbaugh this past year has showed what it's meant to be a Michigan man, whereas he hasn't his other years, and he's been there for a long time. This will be his 7th season, if I'm not mistaken, in the maize and blue. So, I think it's time that they make a step up, but can they top it, though? He's losing a lot of good players. He's losing David Ojabo, Aiden Hutchinson, and Dax Hill on his defense, and some other very, very solid players. Nico Collins on his offense. So that's just a couple players to name that come off the top of the head. So, I don't know about Jim Harbaugh. And he is in limbo right now on whether he stays as the Michigan head coach. I think right now, if he were to leave, I don't want him to leave, but if he were to leave, right now would be the best time. So I think some advantages that they do have are J.J. McCarthy possibly winning that spot over Cade McNamara. I think if Jim Harbaugh is smart, if that staff is smart, they give J.J. McCarthy the starting spot. He deserves it, in my opinion. Cade McNamara, he's done nothing wrong. But J.J. McCarthy's a 5-star that they're just sitting on the bench. I get he was a true freshman, but now's his time. You don't want to have his first year be his junior year because he's good. He'll leave right away. So that's just where I stand on that. He wants his future to be good, so I think you start him this year. And then also they have some key additions coming in. Will Johnson, a 5-star cornerback, great prospect out of southeastern Florida. I watched some of his film. He's really, really good. He was down to Ohio State and Michigan, ended up choosing Michigan, and I think that's a good move for him because, he might get lost on the depth chart, at least early on in his collegiate career at Ohio State. I also want to touch on Derek Moore, a 4-star D lineman. He's really good too. And Keon Stab, a 4-star safety out of IMG Academy. Obviously, a lot of recruits come from IMG Academy, and, I think he's the next one of those great safeties to come from IMG. At number 4, I have the reigning champs, the Georgia Bulldogs, obviously head coached by Kirby Smart. Some key additions that they have are Malachi Starks, a 5-star D-end, Jaheim Singletary, a 5-star cornerback, Marvin Jones Jr., a 5-star D-end. Georgia breeds 5-star defensive players. There's just nothing more to say about that. You saw the national championship game. Try to tell me differently. You can't. So I guess some disadvantages that I do have about this Georgia team, and there's not a ton, but is their QB situation. Who will be under center next year? Stetson Bennett has talked in the past couple of days about coming back. I don't know if he wins that spot. I think this is one of those stories where you say, great season, but I don't know if we need to have you back. Also, JT Daniels, he is mulling his future at Georgia if he doesn't win that spot. And then Brock Vandergriff, great talent. So I think those are some disadvantages. You never want 3 players fighting for one spot because we live in the era of transfers, which is never a good thing. And also the loss of their defensive captain, Nakobe Dean. He's great. He's a great player. He leads player accountability. We saw that in the championship game. And he's just a great all-around player. Nakobe Dean will be missed on that Bulldog defense. And also, they're going to lose a lot of players to the draft, which is normally what teams this far up in the order, they lose a lot of players in the draft. So I think that's just something that you think about and something that went into making them the 4th thing. However, they do have a really easy schedule next year, so they're going to be in the SEC championship game, but they might not be able to find the way into the playoff considering the amount of teams that are in this tight SEC race. At number 3, I have another SEC team, Texas A&M, head coached by Jimbo Fisher. Key additions are Evan Stewart, 5-star wide receiver, Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy, 5-star DL, Denver Harris, a 5-star cornerback, and Connor Weigman, a 5-star quarterback. Obviously, we talked about it on the last episode. Texas A&M has the best recruiting class in history, bar none, beating out last year's Alabama class. But there's a big deal about this. They used a lot of money to, make this class. And a lot of pressure comes with that, and a lot of pressure goes on Jimbo Fisher's shoulders because these same guys that are providing all this money are also providing him his huge contract to stay at Texas A&M. So I think if they don't perform, I think that does go on Jimbo Fisher's shoulders. It's a good team. Obviously, you want to play at Kyle Field because of the noise that makes. That's never an environment that you want to be in if you're a team. Obviously, Alabama learned this year, do not take advantage the fact that you're playing Texas A&M because they're a good team, especially at Kyle Field. So some disadvantages for that team. I know we talked a lot about their advantages, but they do have a lot of disadvantages. They have no real quarterback right now. Haynes King or Connor Weigman, a true freshman, or somebody who's coming off of a big injury. So I think that's just something that you talk about. And then you get a transfer, Max Johnson from LSU. So what is Jimbo Fisher supposed to do there? He's got a lot of talent. But who is going to win that starting spot? I think that will really tell the story of how capable this Texas A&M team is in the long run. At number 2, we have the Ohio State Buckeyes, head coached by Ryan Day. Some key additions that they made was C.J. Hicks, a 5-star linebacker, great size and great skill for him. Sonny Styles, a 5-star safety, great playmaking ability. And Amari Arbor, a 5-star edge. Some advantages, I have to say, for the Ohio State team is that they have eight home games, which nobody wants to play in the shoe. But if you have 8 home games, that's kind of insane. Definitely a positive for Ohio State. Also, majorly needed coaching changes that did happen over the offseason for Ohio State. Obviously, the addition of new defensive coordinator Jim Knowles from Oklahoma State. You also have Perry Lino from Cincinnati, built Ahmad Sauce Gardner in that insane Cincinnati cornerback squad. He's going to be the Ohio State safeties coach. And then the best part is Tim Walton. He was the former Jacksonville cornerbacks coach. Jalen Ramsey credited Tim Walton for all of his success, which I think is just an amazing prospect for Ohio State and their continued endeavors with Tim Walton. And they have a lot of young quarterbacks coming in. I think they will miss a lot of recruiting that comes with Kerry Combs, And, there's give and take in that coaching situation, but I think overall it's a good thing for Ohio State. Also, the ability to keep Brian Hartline is something that cannot be understated. He's a great recruiter and a great coach for Ohio State. Also, he's young, which goes back to my Marcus Freeman point. The younger you are, the more recruits you get. So there's where I kind of stand on that point. Ohio State has the best offense in all of college football for next year, and I can confidently say that. They have C.J. Stroud at quarterback. They have Jackson Smith and Jake Bell, wide receiver number 1, Marvin Harrison Jr., wide receiver number 2, Julian Fleming or Emeka Egbuka at wide receiver number 3, Travion Henderson in the backfield. I don't think there's a better solid offensive core in the nation. I do think their defense is something that needs to be addressed, but Jim Knowles is there for a reason at Ohio State. I do think some disadvantages that Ohio State has is they lost to Michigan. That's something that you can't do. But also Ryan Day knows the severity of that, and I think that's why he made those changes. So the disadvantages I have are tough away games. Now, they don't have many. They have 5. But some of the away games are kind of challenging. You have Penn State on the road. The whiteout, you never want to see that if you are Ohio State, but you have to expect it every other year. And also Michigan State on the road. We saw what happened this year, but this is a new Spartan team. Obviously, Mel Tucker's done an amazing job. So I think that those are some bad games that you don't really want to see on your schedule if you're the Ohio State Buckeyes. At number 1, the best team in my way too early top 10 predictions, I have Alabama. Obviously, I think you could expect this. Head coached by Nick Saban. Great team. Some key additions that they have there are Jeremiah Alexander, a 5-star edge rusher. Ty Simpson, a 5-star QB. He's going to be the next Bryce Young. He's going to fill that role very, very well. Elias Ricks, a 5-star cornerback transfer from LSU. And Jahmyr Gibbs, a 4-star running back from Georgia Tech. Do not sleep on Jahmyr Gibbs. He can hurt you. And I think his dedication to the game is really something that I cannot understate. I think some advantages that come with the Crimson Tide team are the chip on their shoulder after they lose the national championship game. Nick Saban gets to tell his players, they come to Alabama to win national championships. That group did not do it. So Nick Saban can use that against him. Nick Saban fuels teams to national championships, and he could definitely fuel this 2022 team to a national championship. And there's no doubt in my mind that they will at least get into the college football playoff. Nick Saban can deliver in those big-time games, didn't in the national championship game, and I don't think he can live with this failure. So that's where I stand on that point. Some disadvantages are that they lose their speedy wide receivers. John Mechie, he's still undecided, fairly certain that he will not be back in Tuscaloosa next year. And also, Jamison Williams has already declared great wide receiver, great asset for Bryce Young. Both of those players are gone. Holman Wiggins, the Alabama wide receiver coach, has built good wide receivers. You just look back at the past 5 years of all the Alabama wide receivers that are in the NFL, you can see your answer there. He is a great, great coach. But, we had some shaky starts for the young wide receiver squad of Alabama's future. So I think that's definitely something that needs to be addressed in this offseason and something that Alabama can work on. Also, Alabama needs to work on their secondary. I guess that's why they brought in Elias Ricks. And Henry Toto, he's coming back, and he's a linebacker. I think he's a great captain for that team, and I think Alabama will be number one for a long time this next offseason. All right, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Hit the like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one. Thank you, guys.